Good morning and welcome to the May 27th, 2021 Zoning Board of Adjustment meeting. If any member of the audience wishes to speak to an item on the agenda today, there are speaker request forms to the left of the dais. Please fill out the request with the agenda number of the item you wish to speak to and hand it to the secretary. At this time, we would also like to ask that if any member of the audience has a cell phone or other electronic device, that you either turn it off or turn the ringer to silent. If you need to take a call, please step out to the hallway so the meeting is not disrupted. The public hearing on item number 1, 21 VA 002 is hereby opened.
Morning. 21 VA 002 is a variance request to reduce the front yard setback from 20 feet to 8 feet for property located at 2905 Garden Lane. Property is developed with a, we got the lights, single-family home and a detached garage. The applicant has submitted a preliminary subdivision plan to split the lot into 2 buildable lots. That subdivision is requiring that 16 feet of a right-of-way be dedicated for Garden Lane, and thus the variance that would reduce the front yard setback from 24 feet to 8 feet. Property zoned low-density residential district. It's east of South Valley Drive, south of Garden Lane. Future land use is urban neighborhood, and give you an idea of where it is, west of Elkvale Road and 44 intersection, and south of St. Pat, and south of Johnson Ranch subdivision, which we've done a lot of review on recently. Here's a plat document that they're submitting, so they would be creating a buildable lot on the south side. So the variance request, that's one of the stipulations of approval of this preliminary subdivision plan, is that a variance be obtained for the front yard setback. Getting the 16 feet of right-of-way is a public benefit, and we're recommending approval for the variance for the existing structure. So if the property were to be redeveloped or new development on lot 2, that it comply with all setbacks. Here we are looking south into the property at the existing dwelling and detached garage. So nothing, they're not building new, they're not changing anything. It's just that 16 feet of right-of-way needs to be dedicated for Garden Lane. If they don't move forward with the plat, then the right-of-way doesn't need to be dedicated, and the variance, the setback will still be 24 feet. But if they do continue with the preliminary subdivision plan and move forward to final plat, then they'll be dedicating that additional 16 feet of right-of-way. Looking back towards Valley Drive to the west, this is property to the north, and then to the east, Garden Lane dead ends to the east as it gets to Elkvale Road. So as noted, the dedication of additional right-of-way for Garden Lane is a public benefit, and staff is recommending approval of the variance for the existing structure. Are there any questions for staff at this time?
Thanks, Fletcher. Any questions for staff on this item?
I move to approve.
Okay. Haven made the motion to approve the variance to reduce the minimum required front yard setback from 20 feet to 8 feet. Vicky?
Mr. Chair, we could do the criteria 1 and 2, that it's reasonable use, so as to justify the variance, and the special circumstances, the platting of the lot to dedicate 16 feet of right-of-way, which is a public benefit.
Vicky, is
Mr. Chair,
yeah.
so this variance is for the existing structure only. If it should ever be removed, that lot is big enough that a new residence could sit 20 feet back. So just to point out that this variance is for the existing structure only.
Haven, on the, as you know, on Zoning Board of Adjustment, we have to cite our criteria for approval when we make the motion. Do the criteria that Fletcher named work with your motion?
Yes, I'll include that in the motion.
Okay. Is there a second to the motion? Okay, Mike Gallagher seconded the motion. And is there any discussion on the motion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Item number 2.
Item number 2, 21 VA 003, the applicant has requested that the item be continued 2 meetings or 1 meeting?
June 24th.
To June 24th.
Okay.
Sorry to continue.
Okay. Vince made the motion to continue this to, and I just heard it, June 24th. Okay. Is there a second to that motion to continue? Mike Gallagher made the, he raised his able hand. Any discussion on the motion to continue? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. And that's the last item. Oh. I didn't have minutes on here to approve. Karen? Oh, really? Oh. Well, the script I'm reading off didn't have any minutes to approve, but there are some. Karen, would you care to make a motion then?
I'll make a
All right. Karen made the motion to approve the minutes from the April 22nd Zoning Board of Adjustment meeting, and thank you for keeping me honest here. And Rachel seconded that motion. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. All right, any discussion items, staff items for Zoning Board of Adjustment, or are we good to adjourn this one? I'd look for a motion to adjourn Zoning Board of Adjustment. Rachel made that motion, and Karen seconded the motion. All those in favor of adjournment, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, we're going to move to the Planning Commission meeting for May 27th, 2021. Again, if any member of the audience wishes to speak to an item on the Planning Commission agenda, please fill out a speaker request form. They're located on the table along the left wall. Hand it to the staff seated over there, and we can get you onto the agenda. Consent calendar today. Items 1 through 10 have been placed on the consent calendar and may be approved as a group. Action will be taken on all consent items in accordance with staff's recommendation by a single vote. Any item may be removed, though, from the consent calendar by any planning commissioner, staff member, or audience member for separate consideration at this time. The findings of this planning commission are recommendations to the city council. The city council will make the final decision with the exception of the following items. Item 2, 21 PD 017, item 4, 21 PD 019, and item 5, 21 PD 021. The Rapid City Planning Commission's actions on these 3 items are final unless any party appeals that decision to the Rapid City Council. All appeals must be submitted in writing to the Department of Community Development by close of business on the 7th full calendar day following action by the Planning Commission. Are there any items 1 through 10 that staff would like to remove?
Item number 3.
Okay. And are there any items 1 through 10 that any planning commissioner would like to remove? 9. And then are there any items that any audience member would like removed from the consent calendar for separate consideration? The chair would then entertain a motion to approve items 1 through 10 with the exception of items 3 and 9 in accordance with staff's recommendation. All right, Rachel made the motion to approve those items. Karen seconded that motion. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Item number 3.
Good morning, Kip Harrington, Long Range Planning. Item number 3 is an amendment to the comprehensive plan to revise the major street plan by removing a portion of a proposed minor arterial street. Lights, please. No, thank you. So here's our comparison map of, on the left side, the area that is to be revised outlined in yellow, and it shows the section of East Fairmont Boulevard as a proposed minor arterial street located between Campbell Street and the Rapid City Pier and Eastern Railroad right-of-way. The applicant has proposed an amendment to remove that portion of East Fairmont Boulevard from the major street plan. This is an aerial view looking towards east is on the top part of the screen, and the red line shows the proposed construction of Fairmont Boulevard extending to the east. And this is the opposite view with Campbell Street at the top of the map, and then it extends to the existing Fairmont Boulevard that's located at the bottom of the map. So that's looking from west to east. Went out and took some site photos. This is looking east towards the railroad tracks. This is taken from the intersection of Campbell and Fairmont. You can notice that the street is not constructed, it is just a gravel road. However, it appears that the right-of-way is intact as a 100-foot right-of-way for a minor arterial street. This is at the east end of the proposed Fairmont Boulevard extension where it meets the railroad tracks. This is looking north to the storage unit that is currently located there. This is looking back from the intersection of Fairmont and Campbell on the west side, looking east. So you can see that Campbell has been developed, Fairmont has been developed, and then it goes into a gravel section on the east side of Campbell Street. This again is looking to the south from the proposed Fairmont Boulevard extension. And then this is looking back towards the west from where the pavement ends at the intersection of Fairmont and Campbell. And again, looking back towards the west from the intersection. And one more shot, this is from the railroad tracks, then looking back to the west. So you can see again, it's undeveloped and a gravel road. So in reviewing the comprehensive plan, we go through a lot of different criteria, and there are 6 that are listed in the project report. And the goal of the comprehensive plan is to provide connectivity and provide a continuous network of sidewalks, bicycle paths, and roadways within and between neighborhoods. And so we feel that this Fairmont Boulevard extension is a vital part of our network. It extends from Mount Rushmore Road on the west all the way out to Elkvale Road on the east. Elkvale Road was constructed with the idea that Fairmont Boulevard would be able to connect to it someday in the future. And this provides us with a direct east-west connection between Mount Rushmore Road and Elkvale Road. As you may see in our major street plan, Rapid City does not have a great grid system, the way our streets are laid out due to our topography, but a grid system is very much desirable, and this is one of the few continuous east-west connections we have throughout the community. It also provides direct access from Rapid Valley and the growing eastern part of the community to schools and also to the hospital, and would form an important emergency route in the future as development occurs. The sticking point right now would be that there are the railroad tracks to cross. Right now it would require some sort of structure, and it's kind of a tight squeeze to get that structure in between Campbell and Fairmont. However, we don't think that's insurmountable. There are different types of federal grant programs we could apply for, or we could use other types of CIP or vision funds to construct a structure when necessary. Also, staff would like to note that the railroad switching yard is not a permanent fixture. Railroads come and go, as you've seen on the east side of town. There was a railroad that went along South Highway 44, East Highway 44, out past the airport. That railroad is no longer there. So we would like to preserve this corridor as an important east-west connection through the community to allow for that connectivity in our Rapid City street system and grid system. With those notes, staff would recommend to deny this application in order to preserve this corridor as a future transportation network component. Are there any questions for staff?
Thanks, Kip. Any questions for him right now? I have one speaker request form on this item. If there aren't any questions, I'll go to that. All right, Kyle Trelaw.
Good morning, and thank you for hearing this item. So I'm going to take just 2 seconds here because this is Fletcher's last meeting. And I've been able to work with Fletcher for the last 10 years. He don't know that yet. It is, Vicki, it is. And so I need to just, me and him started about the same time, so I started working in Rapid City about 12, 15 years ago, and Fletcher was a planner that started with me. It's been a great experience, and I'm going to miss him, and I know that we all will. So I just wanted to publicly thank him for his service for the last 10 or 15 years of working together. He's been a great person to work with. Now on to the item. As you can see from these pictures, we've got a request in front of us, which is essentially to vacate this portion of the major street plan, which is a continuation of Fairmont Street through this area. What we have run into is that we're right off of Highway 79. Highway 79 is an incredibly busy and growing corridor. And we've got a new potential commercial facility, another holiday station, that is looking to redevelop this site, this area that, as you saw, has warehouses and storage on it right now. The issue that we're running into is that there is this right-of-way that exists, and it is this continuation of Fairmont. The problem is that it is dead-ending into this railroad track. We have, on the other side of these pictures, there's 5 railroad tracks. This is an active siting. In talking to the railroad, this is not on any kind of list for closure or anything like that. This is an active connection that they use as a siting for this industrial area that extends on both sides of this. It continues to the south, and there's plans for additional growth on this railroad to the south. So, yes, the railroads can come and go, but in talking to the railroad, this is an active and integral part of their current short line systems that make railroad traffic important. Another kind of information, or just a little bit of background on the railroad is that a lot of these railroads, this one in particular, this company in particular, they're in an expansion mode right now. The cost of shipping freight through and on railroads is dropping, and it's becoming maybe not necessarily competitive with over-the-road trucking, but it is definitely, when you're looking to the future as to where and how we're starting to move goods across this country, the railroad is becoming and picking up more and more interest from a lot of different clients. So we've actually done a lot of work with the DIS Railroad and a lot of other ones, and moving traffic and figuring out how we can build some of these, just like this facility is, some loading, unloading zones, and bringing the cost of that freight. It's also kind of more of a green energy. It takes less fuel. And so, there's a lot of reinvestment right now in this railroad system and this short line itself. But so therein lies the issue is that we've got a railroad track. We've got 4 sidings lined up right next to it. We've got a very tight existing right-of-way. It's 100 foot, but essentially, because this isn't like your standard railroad crossing where you've got an active train that might cross it back and forth, this has got parked cars that stay there. They're unloaded. You don't have that intermediate time when you can have like an active crossing through here. So this has got to be some sort of structure that's going to come up over the top or bridge across the system while it's still active. So the ability to construct that within this railroad is or within the right-of-way is limited. It severely limits the ability to develop these 2 properties. It makes essentially this right-of-way unbuildable given that current situation, with the expectation that this situation would continue. On the other side of the railroad, we run into a series of, I'll just put a quick picture up here. Oh. Thank you. And I should know better than this, but they don't show up very well. This is from the backside of the driving down Creek Drive to the other side of this railroad and looking back to the east. So we have a series of deep gullies and drainages that crisscross through this entire area. There's floodplain and a lot of other issues that would lead to the construction of this entire system, this entire road, this Fairmont street system being incredibly difficult to construct here on moving forward. And with that, I'll be available for any questions if there's anything that comes up or if the discussion leads to anything else. Thank you.
All right, any comments, questions from the commission on this one? Vince?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I understand a similar existence is right down the road there on Minnesota that crosses Campbell, and then that goes across. And have we ever had a problem with that area there? Doesn't it cross the railroad tracks?
Kip?
Mr. Chair? No, currently Minnesota Street does not cross the railroad tracks east of Campbell Street.
Is there a plan to make Minnesota connect to Elkvale Road eventually?
Yes, sir. Our major street plan identifies both Fairmont Boulevard extending east and Minnesota Street extending east as vital components of our transportation system. If currently this Fairmont Boulevard were not to be constructed, it would create what's basically a 2-mile gap from north to south for any sort of east-west connection in our street network.
That's the Fairmont project that you're talking about?
Correct.
Okay. And as far as the Minnesota connection, Minnesota Street connection, do you know when that might be completed?
That will be development driven, like most of the roads in Rapid City. So as that area develops, that's when the road will be constructed, and that point would cross the railroad tracks. The benefit Minnesota Street has is that it only crosses one set of tracks. It does not cross a siding. And there's a little more room between Campbell Street and Minnesota Street, or between Campbell Street and the railroad tracks at Minnesota Street. However, we feel that both of these components are needed in our transportation system, and therefore we do not recommend removing Fairmont Boulevard from our major street plan. The major street plan is intended to serve the public in the future, 50 to 100 years in the future. So by removing this component from the major street plan, that would allow for the vacation of right-of-way. And as you folks are familiar with, once you vacate right-of-way, it's virtually impossible to get it back. So our goal with this is to preserve this corridor for the future expansion of Rapid City to the east, and again, provide a significant east-west connection that has direct access to the hospital and to school facilities, and keep that as an important component of our transportation network.
You mentioned the railroad track crossing, that maybe a federal grant for such a project?
There are certainly options for that. We haven't really looked at those yet because there's not a need at this time for that connection. However, as Rapid City continues to expand to the east and the area east of here grows, then we'll be looking at that connection in the future.
How successful have we been in getting those kind of grants in the
We
past?
haven't really done too many. South Dakota Department of Transportation has been very successful, and we'll be working with them on some in the upcoming future, so we will see how that goes.
Okay, thank you. If I may retain, I'd just like to ask Kyle, what is the purpose of, or what do you intend to do with the property there?
Kyle?
So overall, the plan that we'd be proposing for this property, if this were to move forward, and there's a few other items that would have to move forward, but there's a holiday convenience store that would like to build on that intersection that would require replatting the properties adjacent and vacating this portion of right-of-way to allow this to develop and kind of redevelop that area.
Okay, thank you.
Rachel?
Yeah, I have a question for Kip, but I think Vicki also had a comment. If, Mr. Chair, if we could ask her to.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. So, Public Works Department did look at all of the alternate crossings that could take place along Campbell Street to see if this is one that they could give up in trying to work with the current owners and their project plan to put a holiday convenience store basically across where the street is, or the right-of-way is right now. And their comments and recommendation is, long-term, this is the best connection, topographically and otherwise. Dirt moves, so even though there are gullies, that can be readjusted. Many of you may remember when, before Fifth Street was connected to Catherine Boulevard, we put a big bend in the road, and we used TIF dollars to do that. Probably it would be TIF dollars that would cover this raised crossing over the railroad tracks. And then the hill that we went around got removed, and that's fairly level land today. You can develop in floodplain. It does require a floodplain development permit. So those aren't obstacles that we can't overcome. In addition to this being topographically the best crossing, what we also heard from the fire department is this is a very needed route because it does provide direct access to the hospital. And of all the potential crossings we could have, this would be the hardest one to give up.
Thanks, Vicki. Rachel?
Kip, I have a question for you too, please. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Have you been able to look at if there was a crossing in this, over the railroad tracks, and the railroad tracks remained as they are, what grade would be required to get a structure over there?
No, we have not done any engineering on this at this time.
Okay, thank you. That's my only question.
Okay. Kelly?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Kip, this is for you as well. Just a quick question. So, obviously, the major street plan looks down the road 50 to 100 years, and you're looking at future development between Elkvale and Campbell. Is there if this were to go through, is there a timetable on when development would sort of kick off between Elkvale and Campbell? And second part to that, obviously, if Fairmont becomes a major street, I mean, when I was a kid, that was a tiny little 2-lane asphalt strip. Obviously, Fairmont would become a major street with traffic being opened up to further east. Has that been taken into consideration if this thing were to go through?
So as far as the timeline for development, again, we do not control the timeline of development. That is strictly up to the individual landowners. And Fairmont Boulevard is identified as a minor arterial street on the major street plan. It has been for a very long time, so that takes into consideration the connectivity and the connection through the neighborhood. We have a lot of arterial streets that run through neighborhoods. Fifth Street is a good example, Jackson Boulevard. So we have a lot of arterial streets that actually do function well with residential neighborhoods. And I misspoke on the engineering question, so I have Todd Peckosh from engineering here to correct me.
Yeah, just wanted to clarify on Rachel's question. We've looked at it as far as the grades that you'd have to climb up to get over the tracks. The tracks are actually 6-7 feet lower than Fairmont today. So to get your clearance and then your girders, the bridge would, or the grade would have to be about 20 feet higher than Fairmont Street, which over 500 feet is possible to do.
Thanks, Todd. Kel, back to you.
Just one final question. The land between Campbell and Elkvale, is that primarily privately owned tracts, or is that any county land, or whose hands does that lie in now?
Vicki?
Mr. Chair, so that is primarily private-owned property. However, it is amazing how we have been reviewing industrial development, and this is an industrial area. And so we do see that this area will see growth. It will take several years for it to probably grow from 44 to Elkvale Road. But again, as we are looking at some plats, one of the other plats you previously approved on the agenda today was a property that's on the other side of the tracks that is for an industrial use.
Thank you.
Even?
Yeah, just to clarify, at least my understanding, the access over to Elkvale from Campbell, we've got St. Pat and 44 on the north, and then right now there's nothing until you get down to Catherine on the south. So my understanding then would be Fairmont and Minnesota would be the two accesses between Catherine and St. Pat?
Mr. Chair?
Yep.
That is correct. We can take a look at the major street plan, and I'm sorry this isn't to the perfect scale. I wanted to zoom in on this area. But yes, to the south of Minnesota Street, there is no east-west connection other than Catherine Boulevard. And then as we get to the north, there is no other east-west connection other than St. Patrick Street.
And so when you refer to the 2-mile stretch, is that from St. Pat then to Catron, or?
Yes, that is correct.
So the question then on the getting over the tracks, I guess, is a major issue here. So the way I understand it, then the city has at least a couple of possibilities in the future to provide that overpass or underpass over to get by the tracks.
Yes, it again is not something that we have a scheduled project for, but as development occurs and this connection becomes needed, then we would take a look at our options for crossing those tracks.
Eric Heikus?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think being low down on the list with questions, most of mine were answered in the previous discussion. I think both points made by Kip and Kyle were excellent. So the feasibility of a crossing is real. Is there, I guess I'm just out of curiosity, an at-grade solution? Does that happen with a minor street criteria then? Or at what point does it dictate having an overpass or a structure, I guess?
Todd?
Actually spoke with the railroad on that, and because it's a yard, they would never approve an at-grade crossing. There's a possibility of relocating that, which the city would have to contribute towards. So if we could move those tracks out of the way and just have the through tracks, then that may be something that would be able to be worked out. But as it is now, the railroad has no interest in that.
That answers my question. Thank you, Todd.
All right, other comments, questions? Karen?
Thanks for the presentation, Kip. That was very professionally done.
Thank you.
This is a question that's come up for years. I mean, it's not something just as today. I mean, we've had the same type of discussion about that location before, and when we did some annexations in the valley, I know that was one of the things that we talked about during that time. I think that we've had other areas in town that we've tried to keep the corridors open. I'm thinking of like the road through the hill, which that one I'm sure is probably not going to go anywhere, but you never know. This is something that, you know, we've seen how Catron Boulevard was built, that went from 16 to Sheridan Lake Road, and I would never have thought that would happen because of the topography at that time, and it's a viable street right now to connect both east and west. And I think from looking at the east side of town, we need to have some way to get people from the east to the hospitals and to this side of town. And I know it's expensive, but if there's ways that we can do it, I know that physically it can be done. Anything can be done with a little dollar, you know. But I just think that that's important to keep that corridor open, and I just wanted to state my opinion about that. So that's, I don't have any questions for you, but thanks, Kip.
Thank you.
Vince?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Not too long ago, I know that on the city council, the alderman from Ward 1 had an issue with if you continue that Minnesota Street all the way across Elkvale, Minnesota continues on the other side. And he fought for that light, that traffic light that's out there now. I mean, we tried with that issue, we tried to make sure that that corridor stayed open. So I just want to point that out, that this is just an addition to what we've already started in the past with making sure that those folks that are on the other side of Elkvale Road can continue. And if they use Minnesota or they use Fairmont in the future, it makes sense for safety reasons. I mean, we just approved a project not too long ago off of 44 where that's along the creek area, and if they had to go all the way down Elkvale or St. Patrick to eventually get to the hospital, that could take time. And so I'm in favor of the staff's recommendation.
Rachel?
Just like Karen, I'm just going to state my opinion here. I don't have any additional questions, but I think we've all had the experience of driving in an area and a dead ending into a property when you feel like the road should continue, and how frustrating that can be, you know, and you ask yourself, well, why is there a building here, or why doesn't the road continue? And all you can say is, well, someone, you know, years ago approved, you know, a building here or something like that, and now it inconveniences a ton of people who need to use that space. And I think that's kind of similar to what's going on right now, is that we could look down, you know, 30, 40 years from now and say, why the heck isn't there a road here? You know, and that's what I'd want to prevent. So, thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right. Other comments from the commission? If not, Mike? Okay. Mike Gallagher made the motion to deny the comprehensive plan amendment. And Vince seconded that motion. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? John? Okay. The motion carries with 1 no from John Hare. Item 9, I think. Right? It's been a while. Let me check. Yep. Karen?
Yes, I just have a question on the access point. I think the access point is from where that home, that daycare is. It's across the street from that, if I understand it right.
Mr. Chair,
Vicki?
so just to catch the audience up, this is a preliminary subdivision plan to create 36 townhome lots, a 1 apartment lot and 3 single-family residential lots, and this is out on Catron Boulevard. Let's see. That does not look right. Oh, it's because I'm on the rezone. Let's go to the actual plat document. And for whatever reason, it won't let me open it. Oh, wait. Here we go. So this is about a 20-acre parcel, currently zoned general ag, seen as urban neighborhood. Actually, it's seen as low-density neighborhood on the city's comp plan, and I'm getting to that layout. Here we go. So that street that's called Tallgrass that comes in off of Catron, Karen, you'll relate to this since you live out there. Tartan Court is about over here, maybe a little bit more. In this area. Well, isn't that good? About where that A is. Does that help you, Karen, to understand where the access is? It's over in this area.
From looking at the rapid map, it looked like the access point would be, there's that daycare, but then right next to the daycare going up the hill is a house. And it looked like it's directly across from that house, not the daycare.
Directly. I went out there the other night. There is an existing approach, and there are 2 rezones. Let's see, we did something back the other way. So that shows Catron there, and the access to the house is not directly across from it, and there is a median as well. So those turning movements would be separated by a median.
Okay, that's kind of what I was going for, is how people are going to get out with the construction of all those apartments on top of the hill, and the discussion from all our neighbors and people even that aren't neighbors, that just happen to be driving down there. The congestion from those apartments and all the people coming out of the development in Edinburgh is going to be really, it's going to be scary for a lot of people, just because it gets scary now, just trying to turn around because of the medians and stuff. You can't turn left on coming out of one part of the development, but you can on the other part, which is directly across from those apartments. Anyway, that's an issue that we struggle with, because if Lettner is going to put in his apartments, all that traffic coming out of there, it may in the future require a traffic light. That's the thing that we don't know yet, but we'd all like to see a traffic light there, but it's too close. It's just a crazy thing. But this would add more people coming out onto Catron, and I know the state DOT has to sign off on that, and it is farther down the road, but it's still going to have a lot of congestion on Catron, which was originally supposed to be a thoroughfare, and it's 60 miles an hour posted right now, and that area right there is 60 miles an hour. So that's my concern with this development. I think it's a beautiful spot. I think it's they've got a right to put apartments and townhomes and anything in that area, but it's that traffic that really bothers me a lot. So I will probably vote against this. I don't know what anybody else will do, but it's because of that. It's not because of the apartments or the housing over there. I think that's a beautiful spot for housing, but it's just trying to get past that issue of getting out into the street. So I just wanted to mention that, and knowing where it's at, and there's a median, that does help. So,
Mr. Chair.
Vicki?
So this was reviewed by state DOT. This is a state highway in this section. They did not feel that there was a safety concern with this development at this location. One of the stipulations is that they do need to secure the necessary access permit from the state, which may, in addition, require a traffic impact study. But even so, they believe that Catron Boulevard has been designed to address this. As an example, when I was out there, it was right at 5 o'clock. And I stayed on site for a while. I wanted to see what that come home 5 o'clock traffic looked like. The state had commented that the lights are synchronized so that there are ample openings for people to make turning movements onto Catron. And it was true. I looked back towards the Walmart, and there was a sea of cars coming. And then, boom, there was a large opening. I came out, I got into the inside lane, I went west on Catron, and then made the U where it's allowed at the top of the hill, and came back down and turned on 5th. So they have said that they've designed it for these types of turning movements, but even so, they may require a traffic impact study because it may warrant other lights. Lights are magical in creating those openings. And if Mr. Lettner should come forward, again, he would have to do a traffic impact study with his apartment development as well.
Thank you, Vicki. And there are times when there is an opening, obviously, because we get out. But I can tell you, when the air base lets those people out at 4 o'clock, from 4 o'clock there's just a steady stream. And in the summertime, when between 4 and 5, and the tourists and the traffic from the logging industries that come out of it is a well-used street, and I've seen cars backed up all the way down from the light all the way down to the daycare just to get through. So it is a difficult area, I think, and for people that will live on the north side of Catron, it won't be so bad as it is for the people who are on the south side, I think. So I just wanted to point that out. Thank you, though, Vicki.
John, and I apologize, I hope I didn't miss you from the last item.
No, I had a comment on why I wasn't supporting that, but
I'd be happy to hear it now, or...
Well, one of the problems that I have with the answers we were getting from staff is there's no timeline. If this is such a big deal, having that access, through Fairmont. Why isn't it in a plan somewhere? And why aren't they trying to get funds? And why don't they put infrastructure out ahead of development instead of reacting to the development? Other cities do it. That's it.
I think that's a great question in general, John. Haven, back to item 9.
Maybe just to follow up a little bit with Karen's discussion, which concerns me too, and maybe this is more of an issue for the DOT, I guess, than the city, but it does seem like there's a real issue. When you start east from 16 on Catron, you're going downhill, and the traffic is moving very fast. And it just seems to me also, and of course another light is kind of impeding what the purpose of Catron is. It just seems to me like we're developing a lot of traffic on Catron, especially from that 16 to 5th section. And again, I guess maybe the DOT's got to solve this in some fashion with service road or some other way rather than direct access onto Catron. Thanks.
Eric Ottenbacher.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just to tag along with what Karen and Haven have said, a lot of the people that travel along that stretch of Catron are, if they're doing 60, they're being pretty conservative. 65, 70 miles an hour is not uncommon coming down that hill. And I'm worried about future development along that, and kind of tag along with what Haven is saying. The more and more that is developed out there, it defeats the purpose of what Catron was designed to do in the first place. And I would be hesitant about approving this tract as well, based on just the traffic on Catron and the speed and safety issues, and maybe not looking long-term enough. Thank you.
Eric Heikus.
So, thank you, Mr. Chair. I work with engineers all the time. One of my favorite jokes is, you guys want to sit around and talk about our feelings? Most of the engineers don't appreciate that, but I think it's funny. My comment is, we're talking about feelings here a lot, and gut reactions and thoughts. Where's the metric? Where's the traffic counts? Where's the evidence of this? You know, show us some math. Show us some data. I guess. I mean, that's probably a bit vague, but you know, we've talked, and Vicki made her comment about, you know, she sat there. Karen talked about her have seen traffic backed up. Is there more? Can we explore this a little more with identify some real metric on this, other than what we conveyed in our opinions? Thank you.
Mr. Chair.
Yeah, Vicki, before you chime in, I'll just point out what you said earlier, that the DOT does control access onto this highway through a permit process, and they by nature will run all those numbers. There's no way that anything happens connecting to their roads without them approving those. Vicki?
Thank you. So DOT has reviewed this. They have not indicated that they had the concerns that we've seen voiced here today, but they did note, and I did share that with the applicant's engineer, that the process to review that access and what that final design might look like takes a little bit of time. So to get started now, because they will vet it thoroughly, and they also warned that in all likelihood they will require a traffic impact study, even for a project this small, based on the dynamics of the street, the speed, the slope, etc. So we've shared all that with the consultant, and they're aware that that is coming forward.
Yeah, and I just, we're getting far afield from this particular application, but I think we as a commission have to be willing to take DOT's input and approval as the rule on this, because we have hundreds and hundreds, if not thousands of acres yet to develop north and south of Catron that will connect to Catron. And we're going, this is a very small application in the scheme of things of what could come in the near future, in my opinion. Kelly?
Thank you. And that's kind of tagging on to my question. You know, thinking long-term, when this bypass was opened up, it was the bee's knees. Everybody could, you know, at a very fast pace get from one side of town to the other. You know, let's say we approve this hypothetically and 10 more come down the road. I mean, sooner or later, you're going to have access points and stoplights to control that, you know, inflow of residents. Doesn't that negate the whole purpose of having a fast-paced bypass across town? I mean, you're talking, that's a big swath of land between the bottom of the hill and Sheridan Lake Road. So, you know, long-term, if that's all developed, how's that going to be addressed?
Vicki?
So some of you may remember that years ago, Campbell Street was a state highway, and the speed limit was higher, and we saw more and more development, and over the course of time, the state and the city coordinated, and that became a city highway, and we lowered that speed limit. The state is very well aware, and they had discussions with the city when we adopted the future land use plan that shows the residential component that is projected for this area. They realize that in time it may take additional design and it may take altering speeds. So that's something that's just ongoing. And I do caution that plats are difficult to deny without some noted, credited concern, such as an example, if there's no water available or sewer or it's in the floodway. But where they're meeting all of the design standards of the infrastructure design criteria manual, and it meets with the design of the future land use plan, it's difficult when we deny those when the property owner was assuming that they could develop in kind with others throughout the city that complies with the future land use plan. I just note that is a concern.
Thank you, Vicki. So the question at hand today is item 9, the preliminary subdivision plan. Further questions, comments on this one? If not, I'd look for a motion if anybody's willing. Good question. Eric Hikus, is he voting today? I think we might be full. No? Alternate. John, moves approval per the staff stipulations. Okay. And Rachel seconded that motion. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor, please say, oh, Karen.
I just want to, I hate to vote no on this just because it's a good piece of property, but if I can, I think I will abstain because I'm too close to it. I live there, and if that's a reason to abstain, I would rather abstain than vote.
Mr. Chair, if Karen is abstaining, then Eric Hikus can vote.
Okay. All right, you're back on, Eric. All right. Any other comments on the motion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? No. Okay. The motion carries with Eric Ottenbacher voting no and Karen abstaining. Item number 11.
Item number 11 is a major amendment to a plan development to allow an on-sale liquor establishment in conjunction with a restaurant. Property located at 1756 Eglin Street. In particular, the applicant's proposing to open a restaurant called Storming Crab. Hours of operation are Monday through Sunday, 11 a.m. to 10 p.m. They'll have 20 to 25 employees, and they're using an existing building that used to be a restaurant. The reason this is a major amendment is because the restaurant that was previously at this location left, and it's been vacant for over 2 years, and their license expired, so they're having to go through the conditional use permit process in order to review whether or not this use is appropriate at this location, because a lot of things can change in 2 years. So, but here's showing the building located on the property. It's 5,408 square feet with a 605 square foot patio. Zone general commercial district and a planned development in the Rushmore Crossing Community Activity Center, Regional Activity Center, and it's mixed-use commercial, showing you the major street plan with East-North Street, principal arterial connecting up to 90, and then Eglin being a collector street. Site plan submitted, because this is a developed site, this is from the original development, but parking is in compliance, setbacks are in compliance, landscaping is in compliance. The applicant did submit some revised signage, which they're just replacing existing signage which was on the building, elevations from the original construction, and then looking from the parking lot into the site, signs are posted in the window to the left of the numbers. This is an established commercial development in the city, and it's great to see another restaurant coming. This is looking to the north, across Eglin, or sorry, to the south, and back to the intersection with East North Street. So it's a very busy area, but definitely where we want to see this type of use. And the parking lot looking towards the west. There's no residential in the area. If we look at the criteria, there are no parks or schools. There's, you know, we do have quite a few other on-sale uses, but this is the area where we want to see restaurants with on-sale. And then we reviewed the conditional use permit criteria, but we are recommending to approve the major amendment with the stipulations noted in the project report, so that if they wanted to expand or, you know, expand the patio, expand the building, they'd have to go through the major amendment process. And if it were to close again for 2 years and someone else came forward to bring in a restaurant, they'd go through a major amendment process again. But with that, staff is recommending approval with stipulations.
Thank you, Fletcher. Eric?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Fletcher, how many liquor licenses or establishments do we have in that particular area surrounding that area of Rushmore Crossing? I know there's a number of restaurants, but...
Yeah, it's mostly restaurants and salons that have. So what we look at is typically when we're looking at an on-sale liquor establishment, a conditional use permit, we're looking at what it's in conjunction with. So we don't have any bars out there that are just serving beer and wine. It's typically in conjunction with something else. So, you know, there's plenty of restaurants in the area. The Who Hot Mongolian Grill, Qdoba, and then we have Fuji Japanese Steakhouse, and then the new pizza, Chicago deep dish pizza place has theirs, and then we have a Perfect 10 nail and beauty salon. So when you go in there and have a manicure or a pedicure, you can have a beer or a glass of wine. So we're not looking at uses in this area where people are going out there specifically to drink. Typically they're going out to eat or have their nails done and having a glass of wine with it. So.
Thank you. One other comment, if I could. That, and this is a little off topic, but that road of Eglin Street, that's getting super congested all the time. Any plans on widening that or making it more accessible? Coming in and out of those establishments is getting extremely difficult.
I'll defer to Todd on this.
Todd?
We have looked at the future project to widen that. I don't believe it's funded yet, but it is something that we're watching.
Okay. Thank you. No more comments.
Mr. Chair?
Vicki?
So Eric, your comment is really well-funded about how many are in the area, and thank you for that. We do look at other uses on sale in conjunction with the casino or just your full bar usage. And we do have the availability within the ordinance to look at saturation for those, where that's the primary reason why someone frequents that facility. And we want to ensure that we don't have several of them in a row, with the exception of the Central Business District. That's where they're supposed to be. So I really appreciate that you asked that question today. If we did see someone wanting to open several bars in this area, we would probably be hesitant to recommend approval when we saw that they were becoming saturated, and we want to point that out and make that difference so that we can win your support if we happen to bring that recommendation forward. So thank you.
Thanks, Vicki. Other questions or comments on item number 11? Look for a motion then. All right, Karen made the motion to approve item number 11 with stipulations, and Rachel seconded that motion. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Item number 12.
Item number 12 is a final plan development overlay to allow a 16-unit apartment building property located at 523 DeGeest. The reason this isn't a final plan development is they're asking for an exception to allow a lot size of 27,878 square feet in lieu of the minimum required 29,000 square feet for a 16-unit apartment building. So based on the lot size, they could do 15, but they're wanting to do 16. In particular, they're looking to build an apartment building with one bedroom and studio apartments. So here we can see the property is currently undeveloped. It's zoned medium density residential district. It's also in a plan development designation, so that would also trigger the final plan development. Future land use is urban neighborhood, so residential fits in. Giving you an idea, DeGeest is identified as a collector street as it continues to go north. Site plan, so they are meeting all the parking requirements, setbacks, and everything for a 16-unit. What they're trying to do is with the housing that's happening in Rapid City, is trying to get one more unit on. Technically, this is a less than 20% reduction, so it's something that staff, if this wasn't in a plan development, we could review it through a zoning exception. And when they're meeting all the other requirements, we would look to grant that. But here we have, it's one building, parking out front. One of the concerns we do have is the location of this dumpster enclosure at the front of the property along DeGeest. And that is addressed in our stipulations of approval. Landscape plan. One of the things we do look at is usable open space. As we've noted in the past, there's the definition in the zoning ordinance doesn't spell out what particularly is usable open space, but one of the stipulations of approval after discussion with the applicant is that they are going to put a patio on this back side of the building, and they'll have to submit that with a building permit showing that area, which will be intended for use by residents on the upper floors. As I said, this is going to be one bedroom and studios, so we're probably not going to see a lot of families here. Probably going to see single couples. So they'll have that patio out there for grilling, for people to use within the building. So that, again, is a stipulation of approval that be shown on the building permit. The stipulation of approval for the dumpster location is that it be located outside of the site triangle, that they demonstrate, because here's where their approach is, that with the building permit they demonstrate that where the dumpster is located is not going to encroach into site triangles, so that we have clear visibility of pedestrians walking on the sidewalks as well as oncoming vehicles. So if they need to move it, then they'll move it and with the building permit, but that's addressed in the stipulations of approval. Elevation, we do have some patios, but it's in keeping with what's developing in the area. Here's an example of dumpster. It's a wall, so it's not a structure that has to meet setbacks because it meets the definition of a wall. We're looking into the property to the west. Sign is posted. A similar development on the property to the south, but here you can see there's a lot of multifamily in this area. That dumpster location, which potentially might, this one might conflict with the site triangle. But there's more residential to the south, looking south on Dig East, and then to the north no, this is the south and east. So there's a large area there ready for development. To the east, you can see the school in the distance, and to the north and east, again, a lot of area where we're going to see a lot of development coming up. And north on Dig East, and to the north and west towards Elkvale Road. With that, staff is recommending approval with the stipulations as noted in the project report. Are there any specific questions for staff at this time?
Haven?
I think the Geese is intended to be an arterial, I think, going north all the way maybe to the service road there at I-90. What's the obligation of this applicant? I see that the road, the current improved road ends about at this property. What's the obligation of this applicant for road improvements?
The road is improved. So as they platted these in the past, they've dedicated the right-of-way, built the road to city design standards or obtained the exceptions. As development continues north, they will continue to construct a collector street to city design standards, connecting up to East Anamosa. But yeah, there's no, that would be one of the stipulations of approval if the street, this is an older picture, so it doesn't show updated. But if we get to the site photos, you can see the dead end is to the north. There's another lot located north of the subject property. So it is developed up to there, and then as they continue to plat to the north, they'll continue that road. I said collector.
Kelly?
And it is a
Oh,
collector
sorry,
street,
collector.
so not an arterial.
Kelly?
No question, just a comment. I'm really pleased to see that the stipulation of some sort of patio was put in place. That's good to see. We've talked about that many times, and I'm happy to see that the developer actually came halfway and met you. I think it's a step in the right direction, and hopefully that trend continues. And also just to comment on the design, I like that it has some character. Some developers can and will design a great big cracker box that appeals to no one. So I'm happy to see that these designs are having some flair and having some lines that are appealing to the neighborhood. So I just wanted to comment on that.
Mr. Chair?
Fletcher?
So your discussion in the past has been great, because when we do meet with the developers and we tell them, when you're designing this, please bring in, show us something. Show us a patio, a playground, something. So that is helping out this discussion, but remember to keep Vicky's feet in the fire about amending that usable open space section of the ordinance and getting some actual meat to it. So I think it's a great thing that we're seeing, and we got to thank you guys for that. So
I'll just throw in a quick comment on the suggesting the approval of 16 units versus 15 units for that minor amount of space difference. It's a 16-unit building is a sort of an off-the-shelf design, 15 units not so much, and that as we talk about affordable housing, sort of seeing that side of it is important, so I do appreciate that. Any other questions, comments? Rachel?
Just a quick one. When we talk about affordable housing, being kind of a driving force in what, if we approve something, if we don't. I just hope that those savings are actually passed on to the people who will be living there. So that's just a comment.
All right, any motions? All right, Vince made the motion to approve item number 12 with the stipulations as noted. And Mike Gallagher seconded that motion. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Item number 13.
Good morning, Sarah Hansel, Planning Projects Division. Staff would suggest item 13 and 14 be taken together, if the chair would agree.
Sounds good. Let's do it.
These two rezones are actually related to item number 9 that was just reviewed and approved along Catron Ridge Subdivision. And in introducing these two items, I actually want to mention that in preparing the materials to be published on the agenda today, I inadvertently had them placed on non-consent. We intended to have them put on the consent agenda. And that's because, typically we put something on non-consent when we've heard concerns from the neighborhood or there's some issue that staff wants to identify and have discussed by the Planning Commission. That happens to not be the case for either of these two rezones. They are in compliance with the future land use plan, and we have not received any correspondence from surrounding property owners about them. So we are recommending that they be approved. I am certainly able and willing to give a presentation introducing these items further if you'd wish, but we are recommending approval. So I'll just look to the chair on how you'd like the meeting to proceed at this point.
Okay. Karen, I do have a...
I just wanted to say that I think both of these rezones are appropriate. If you had somebody that took over the whole thing, I often thought that would be a beautiful spot for a home. So I think rezoning it to residential use is appropriate, and I will be voting for that. So I just wanted to explain why I'm doing this and not the other.
Do any of the commission want to see a full presentation on these two items? If not, are there other questions or comments on the item 13 and 14? All right. Karen made the motion to approve items 13 and 14. And Haven seconded that motion. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Takes us to the end of our normal agenda. Vicki?
We have 3 discussion items. So the first one, Kyle Trulor kind of let the cat out of the bag. Fletcher's leaving us, and he's been with us 10 years. He's a valuable employee. More importantly, he's a dear friend. He's taken a position in Sioux Falls. They're very, very lucky to get him. It's a wonderful opportunity for Fletcher and his family. I did hear on the news 2 nights ago that they're having a beard contest in Sioux Falls right now, so I know Fletcher will do us proud. Hope he competes. We are having a farewell for Fletcher today at 3 on the first floor of this building in the staff break room, which is new and remodeled. And you are all invited. Everyone is invited. We hope that you can stop by for a little cake, ice cream, and a chit-chat with Fletcher. He will put in one more day tomorrow. He's going to hang in there for one more submittal Friday. He will be doing an ordinance later today on open space.
See you on Monday.
Gotcha. So please join us if you can, but I can't say enough about what Fletcher's brought to the city. He's certainly unique in his style, and many of you that have worked with him have learned to appreciate all of his uniqueness. Just kind of an FYI, most of us don't call him Fletcher, we call him Spencer, and there's a long story behind that, but you got to come to the party this afternoon to learn it. So, So having said that, the second item I wanted to visit with you about before I turn it over to Wade is seating. We are looking at moving all of Planning Commission back up in a row unless even one of you have an issue with that. That means that the plastic partitions would come down and you'd be sitting back where you did previously and staff would be joining you as we did in the past. So if anyone has an issue with that, speak up and we'll delay that move. But others are starting to move back on the dais, and we're wondering if you folks are comfortable with that. Anyone opposed to it? Okay, next meeting will be old school, and you'll see us sitting in our old spots as well.
All right. Wade?
Good morning. I just wanted to give you a heads up. Our office is putting an ordinance on the next city council agenda regarding medical cannabis. It's basically hang on to the status quo for now. We're still waiting. The Department of Health is working on administrative rules, basically regulations for licensing and some related things for medical cannabis businesses. And so basically what the proposed ordinance is going to be, it's sort of an explanation basically of the city intends to license, and this is all, I mean, it's excuse me, it's ultimately up to the council, but this is the proposed ordinance. The city intends to license medical cannabis establishments, and so until we have the rules from the state, we're not going to grant any licenses, which the state's not going to grant any either. So, you know, come July 1, you've heard a lot of talk about how it's effective July 1. There's not really an opportunity for a business to operate on July 1 because the state won't have any of the rules in place in order to license them, to permit them to operate. So we're basically piggybacking off of that. We're going to say we intend to license these establishments. We're going to wait to do that until we get guidance from the state, the Department of Health, and Revenue. The other thing is that it's basically a clarification, because right now there's nothing in the zoning ordinances that would allow a dispensary or another medical cannabis establishment to operate. We're basically calling that out as a specific use, saying this use isn't allowed right now in any zoning district. It's going to stay that way until we have a chance to study it and enact a zoning ordinance. And so that future zoning ordinance is going to come to you, but this sort of stopgap first clarification is going straight to council. And that's based on a statute that allows for a temporary zoning ordinance basically while you study something. And so while we're waiting for state rules, we're more or less pushing the pause button to say, we're going to look at this, we're going to decide where this might be appropriate and go from there. So I just kind of wanted to give you a heads up. That's kind of the nutshell version. We're still going to be working on this a lot in the future, and I think, you know, we're talking about a work session, kind of getting everybody's input, identifying some issues and sort of talking through it some more. But we're still a little bit waiting for the state to come out with their rules, and they're working on that right now. So that's basically my update. And I'm happy to answer questions. I don't probably have a lot of answers right now, but that's the plan at this point. So.
All right, thank you, Wade. We have a list of questioners. Well, probably just sit close.
Sure.
And before I go to the list, I'm going to jump the line. Fletcher, my rule is that it's a tragedy to lose any person from Rapid City that provides a lot to this community, and I think you have. And so it is a tragedy, but it doesn't mean that it's not a great opportunity and a good thing for your family. So I get why you're doing it, but for those of us that stay behind, it's a little sad. Anyway, Vince.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And again, I just want to reiterate exactly what you said about Fletcher. I mean, I've seen Fletcher at the Little League fields, so I mean, he gets out into the community, so he's been a part of our community, not just here in this building. So your presentations are professional, and I appreciate it. It gets right to the point, and the clarity is perfect, and good luck to you. Thank you for everything.
Eric Hikas?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would echo comments. I've enjoyed working with Fletcher very much, and I enjoy his uniqueness, and I think you'll have a great experience in Sioux Falls. You can always come back, too. So, and then as to the medical marijuana thing, we've been working a lot in Oklahoma, and they have a statute for medical in Oklahoma, and having stayed in a lot of the cities there, I've been watching how they kind of do their dispensaries, that sort of thing. They're integrated right in the fabric of the community. You have to have a green card to purchase, cannabis. And that's always a good starting point to see what somebody else is doing in another community. So that's a suggestion. I don't know if it's valid or not, but I have been observing that a little bit, and because I know it's coming for us. So, and it seems pretty, accepted and regulated, and it seems almost classy the way they do it. So, if there is such a thing, I'm going to be careful here. But thank you.
Rachel?
Yeah, I have a list of things. So first, Fletcher, we will definitely miss you. You've been great here during my time here, and you were also a great neighbor, and that's sad to see you go. And I think you'll be working in the same building as at least one of my former coworkers. So small world. And then, Wade, a question for you.
Sure.
Are you aware? I'm trying to remember back when this was voted on. Are you aware of any deadlines that the state has to meet in actually enacting and allowing the use of medical marijuana?
There are two deadlines in the initiated measure. The first one is, I don't know if I can get the dates exactly right without looking at it, but I think it's October 29th is when the rules are supposed to be in place. And then there's another deadline in November for when they have to start issuing cards for people that are eligible. And so I think that's the timeline they're working under. So I guess my interpretation of it is, as of July 1, there's not a framework in place for this to take off day one. There need to be rules in place for businesses. I think if you were a person that used medical marijuana, you might have a defense to a criminal charge based on that, but there's a lot of statutory language that deals with that, and that's possibly going to get litigated. So, but no, there are deadlines, October and November, for the state to basically begin. So.
Thank you. And then just a comment, since we on the Planning Commission don't really have much, jurisdiction, so to speak, over most of the implementation, but we do have, saying where these will go. And I know that's kind of down the line just a little bit. One of the things that I've noted in other communities is that establishments like this, which can be classy, I've been at least by them in other communities, but they tend to, in some areas, the way that it's been implemented is that they've been clustered in certain neighborhoods, and there have been complaints that, it's classist, and that, you're kind of pushing undesirable parts or undesirable activities to only certain neighborhoods. And so I just wanted to point that that's something that I'm going to be watching out for, to make sure that, where these are actually located is, serving people who want, that service, but also is equitable in its distribution. And then just a quick question. Are we doing coffee with planners anymore?
So we will be doing a coffee with planners this summer, but right now we are extremely short-staffed and are getting shorter, so bear with us. But now that we see some of the COVID restrictions lessening, we may be able to have it in our community room, which means then we don't have to compete with space at the Civic Center, and that'll make it easier for us to have it as well. So stay tuned.
Okay. Thank you, Wade and Vicki and Eric.
Haven?
Now, Wade, I should know this probably, but since you're here, maybe I won't have to look it up when I get back to the office, but I assume that the counties then can issue these licenses also as the same as the city. Is that correct?
Yes, I believe so. I think counties and cities both have the opportunity to regulate.
So,
And just to kind of back to a couple of other comments and related to that, there are 4 different kinds of establishments that are identified in the statute, and it's dispensary is only one of them. There's cultivation, there's manufacturing, and there's testing. So there are really 4 different types of businesses that we're looking at, and we're going to talk through, I guess, basically where it's appropriate to locate those types of businesses, spacing, other restrictions that might come with that. There is in the initiated measure, there is a spacing restriction for schools. So we're looking at, what other things might need to be spaced, if at all, and how much spacing. If you want to space between 2 dispensaries, or all of those issues are things we're looking at. So, sorry, long answer to a short question.
Karen?
Thank you. I don't have any questions for you, Wade, but thank you. I just wanted to also congratulate Fletcher on his move. You've been here a long time, and you're a familiar face. We know how to deal with you, and that makes it easier for us. And I think this is a great opportunity for you, and I wish you well. So,
Eric Ottenbacher?
Thank you, Fletcher, for your service to the community. We really appreciate it. Wade, I just have a quick question for you. As somebody who would probably be asked to prescribe medical marijuana, are there any caps on, suspected caps on how many dispensaries might be here in the city, per capita, how many they would serve, or other parts of the industry, if you will?
So the city has the ability to put a cap on the number of dispensaries. We're not allowed to say the cap is 0, but we could, theoretically, I suppose we could say 1. That's still part of the discussion. We're sort of looking at this from a couple different angles. The zoning angle is obviously one, and that's what I'm more involved in. The other side of it is the licensing and the cap, as it were, if we want to limit, because you can't limit, or you can't say 0 dispensaries. There's no mention in the statute of the other 3 types of businesses that we talked about, the cultivation, manufacturing, testing. So I think the general consensus is we could say 0 of those if we wanted to. I don't know that that's, at this point we don't have any numbers that we're, saying this is what we're looking at. We're going to talk through those issues with council next week, right? There's a working session, I think, is it the 11th? The 11th, I think, is what we're looking at. So, But that's one of the discussion items is, should there be a cap? What should it be? Some of that might be addressed with zoning because there is, like I said, there's, in the statute, it's built in, they have to be 1,000 feet away from schools, so that is gonna limit a lot of places, so.
Vince?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Wait, if I could just try to get some clarification, and I know no clear plans have been made, but, you know, I mean, when we're talking about zoning, are we talking about the same restrictions like you would put on tobacco smoking and, you know, like there are certain campuses, like the hospital, and I know you mentioned the schools. Are those the kind of restrictions that you're talking about?
I'm talking more about like spacing as far as location. Can you, not necessarily smoking. I think smoking in a public place is prohibited. There's other types of, I don't know, delivery systems, if you want to call it that, edibles, that sort of thing. But as far as like smoking, I think that's ruled out in a public place.
So if I may, you know, I understand that the state's attorney has said in the past that they don't intend to prosecute someone getting caught with marijuana. Is there any reason for delaying or stretching or making this, as Rachel asked about October 29th? Is there any reason why it's not brought up any sooner?
Well, I think that's to give the time for the rulemaking, and that's related more to the licensing. So that's for the state to say, in order to get a license, you need to do these things. Whatever other restrictions they might put on it, I guess. Background checks, what qualifications, that sort of thing. And I imagine that we'll probably borrow heavily from that. I don't know if, you know, comparisons have been made to alcohol licensing.
Right.
And I think that's probably something that everybody's looking at. I don't know if it's going to be the same or not. But I think that's really the reason for the wait, is we're waiting for the Department of Health, the state, to come up with their rules to say, all right, in order to operate this business, you need to have a license. And that license is going to require you to do these things or to qualify in these ways. And so.
Okay. Thank you.
Vicki?
So, state legislature is taking this topic to a work session this summer, and what comes out of that work session will be very important as we look at how we're structuring our zoning ordinance. And so even though we're working on that right now, and you will see an amendment to the zoning ordinance that will identify where these 4 different uses should be allowed, are they permitted if they meet certain criteria, conditional if they don't, it would limit it to those zoning districts only. You're going to see all that, just like you would any other ordinance amendment. But we are working through the logistics of how many licenses. So it's a location and use and a licensing discussion, and they have to go together. As Wade and I have been trying to just get an outline of where we think it should work in the zoning, we really need the group that's working on the licensing to tell us what's our limitations, because if we don't get it there, then we're going to have to write it into the zoning ordinance. So, you know, a lot is going on. Our hope is that we can have something for the public to have access to. So even if we're waiting for the State Department of Health or whomever to finish up what needs to be done before licensing and card holders are issued their cards, we've got those that want to conduct business, knowing speculatively where they should be looking, where they should be purchasing property, to give them that heads up as early as we can. So being considerate, knowing though that whatever we do could change when the state legislature gets done with their work session and they set some parameters. Also note that Pennington County is watching what we're doing very closely. They want to mirror what we do so that we don't have everybody running to the outskirts of the city, or vice versa if one of us is more lenient than the other.
Thanks, Vicki. Staff?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Wait, if I could just try to get some clarification, and I know
Other discussion items today from the commission? All right, I'd look for a motion to adjourn then. Karen made the motion, and Rachel seconded that motion. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. We're adjourned.